everybody. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to address this august audience. Now, it is what is the time?
It's 15 minutes, sir.
No, what is the time? 4:40. So, 4:42. So, we can see that the hall is practically empty, and maybe few of the organizers are sitting. And what is the reason for this? Why in the morning hours you find such huge audience, and when it is 4:42, by this time most of the audience have disappeared? What is the reason? The reason is mental fatigue. By this time, the neurotransmitters have all got depleted, and you are feeling sleepy. It is fine, you can go and have a nap, go back home. It doesn't matter whether you hear Dr. Dwivedee's lecture or not. But suppose if you are an airline pilot, what would happen? You are working with machineries which are dangerous to handle. You are working with boilers. You are working in mining. What would happen? So my today's talk is basically for sensitizing people who are into occupational health, that when the annual health check of the workers is done, cognition is not checked in most of the health check modules. It is the blood pressure, it is the heart, it is the kidney, everything is checked. But the organ which is responsible for productivity is not checked. Whatever a worker does, whatever he performs is from his brain, and you never check the brain. You always check other organs which only are important for existence of the body. But how is the worker's mind functioning, which will finally affect the productivity of the institution, is never checked. It will affect the productivity, it will affect the safety. These two are the most important concerns in occupational health: productivity and safety. And the organ which is responsible for these two factors is the brain, and that is never checked. It is so sad. Now, recently there was a book by one of the White House staffers, which came into public, and it questioned the mental health of President Trump. And President Trump immediately went for his health check and showed the American population that, see, I am physically and mentally fit. I can perform as the president. He is the most powerful CEO of the world. And just because there was a doubt, he ran and got his medical checkup done. Why? Because American public is intelligent. They understand that it is important for their president to be physically and mentally fit enough to take critical decisions. Same is the CEO of a company. The CEO of a company takes all the critical decisions. The CFO of a company takes all the important decisions related to finance. But are they ever checked for their mental health? One bad decision can lead to disaster. Lot of financial hardship for the whole company. But we never check. For the first time in American history, when Bill Clinton was running his presidential office, his opponent Democrat for the presidential nomination was Paul Tsongas. And he was getting more votes from the Democrat. He was more likely to get nominated, but at the last moment he said that since I am suffering from non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I am quitting, I won't be able to handle the post. In 1994, President Reagan said that I am suffering from Alzheimer's. And there was a fear that perhaps Alzheimer's started in his last days of presidency. So the former president, Jimmy Carter, quipped that in future we should get the presidential candidate checked by a panel of doctors to see whether he is a fit candidate for the country or not. That was the first time in American history where this debate started, whether the presidential candidate needs to be physically changed. All physicians can do so, because these cognitive tests are task-based tests. It takes, I will just go through one of the slides, which is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Scale. It takes 10 to 12 minutes to perform this test, and you can find out people with mild cognitive impairment, because the incidence of depression and dementia in this country is huge. The burden is huge. Around 3% of the people beyond the age of 60, and now because the retirement age is increasing, 3% of people beyond the age of 60 have mild cognitive impairment. 3% means out of every 100 individuals more than age of 63 are having mild cognitive impairment in this country. So many of the people in the workforce also might be having the same problem, which we need to find out in time and take proper measures. It doesn't mean that you disqualify them and turn them out, but you can start because today we know there is something known as cognitive rehabilitation, where you start subjecting the person to certain mental exercises. When the body is weak, you do physiotherapy. When the mind is weak, you do cognitive rehabilitation. So cognitive rehabilitation options are available. When a person has not yet gone into dementia, he is into mild cognitive impairment, you try to find out, identify the reason why he is slipping into that, and then you start working on it so that it is prevented. And it also helps you to give him a role which is not too critical for the company. So every year when you go for health check, I think one of the cognitive checks should be a part of that protocol. Now, coming back to the statistics, 10% of the population, Indian population, they suffer from depression at least once in life. And at any given point of time, the prevalence of depression in this country is around 5%. 5% of the population is suffering from depression at any given point of time. And imagine a person who is depressed, is in the force, what will he do? In CRPF you find, in the paramilitary forces, they are killing their own bosses. A workman who is frustrated, depressed, and you are forcing him to work, he might just bash up his superior, and then he would be framed. He has crossed the legal, I would say, the legal perimeters of the legal processes of the organization, and he would be in a legal scenario. So, what the purpose of my today's talk is to emphasize, and what I am saying has been corroborated by various studies. The first time in 1990, Becker et al. In Medical Clinics of North America, which is an important textbook for recent advances in internal medicine, suggested that the cognitive assessment of worker or of people involved in any occupation is important for optimizing the productivity as well as preventing the accidents and safety issues. Ever since then, you go through journals like Ergonomics, Journal of Psychiatry and Environmental Medicine. You go through all these journals which are related to occupational health, you will find umpteen number of studies to emphasize that cognitive assessment and as well as assessment of the mood. And now there are very simple scales. If the physicians who are taking care of these workforces are trained, and it can be a half-day workshop, all the scales can be taught. You don't need an MRI to assess the cognition. You just need a questionnaire-based scale. So now, today, usually I don't speak with slides. I usually talk like a communicator. Today I have slides, and basically what I want to go through is a simple scale which is known as Montreal Cognitive Assessment Scale. Now, Montreal Cognitive Assessment Scale, if ever you wish, if the organization wants we can organize a half-day workshop just for cognitive training, for training the cognitives, for training of how to conduct the cognitive skills for the doctors. Now, all the cognitive scales, they have task-based tests for assessing certain higher mental functions. That is the purpose. So what it is, let us go through it quickly. So now see, one of the higher mental functions is visuospatial and executive function. So what would one do? This is known as trail test. Trail test means you begin with 1 and then what you have to tell the subject is that you have to connect the numbers with the alphabet. So he would connect 1 with A, 2 with B, and then he will go 3 with C, 4 with D, and E with 5. That is what the task he has to be given. Now, if a person is not able to do it properly, that means he has problem with his executive functions and frontal lobe. See, I am just going through this because this is a very easily doable. There are many other batteries as well. But this example I want to highlight so that you are sensitized that yes, we can do it very easily in our regular OPD if you have the proformas with you. Now the second thing you do is you ask the person to redraw this cube. Now suppose if a person has to take major decisions, even is a junior level manager and he is not able to perform this test, he can't take any major decision. You know that this person requires help. Similarly, copy cube. You have to copy this cube and for each activity you are given certain numbers. And then you will ask the person to draw a clock with 10 past 11. So person will draw a clock, 2 hands of the clock and write the numbers. And for contour you give 1 number marks, numbers you give 1 mark, and for hands you give 1 mark. So then finally you calculate the total full mark of this test is 5, and you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 number for each activity, and then you see how much the person gets. So similarly there are other tests. You have to name these 3 animals. So this will check what? This will check the language functions. It is checking the language area of the brain. Then you go to the memory. You tell about these 3 unrelated words: face, velvet, church, daisy, red. And after 5 minutes you will ask them again. That will check the recent memory. Then again you will ask for naming. Sorry, I think there is a problem. So this was just to give an insight as to what are the various ingredients or components of a task-based test which can be done in your OPD. It is doable, it should be done, and the report should be shared with the HR so that they understand that this person perhaps is not fit for that job. It can lead to somebody sitting with disaster and his executive functions are poor. His delay in handling the equipment can lead to a blast in the boiler and the whole colony would be in fire. Similarly, there are questionnaire-based tests which is known as HAM-D, HAM-D, that is for diagnosing depression. It is there are 13 questions are asked to the subject, and based on the score you decide whether the person is suffering from depression or not. And if a person is suffering from depression and if you identify in time, you have to just give few simple drugs to improve his quality of life, productivity and safety. So HAM-D HAM-A, Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test, MMSE. These are the various tests which are available and which can help to improve the overall occupational health.